And we're grateful for the help of the repository and all of those members of the league who helped put this event on this evening. This is what we do. We're a nonpartisan voter education and voter service organization. We want you to be able to cast an informed ballot. And so we hold these events periodically to help you get the information that you need to make an informed vote. We don't particularly care how you vote. We just want you to understand better the issues and the candidates for whom you're casting that ballot. So thank you for joining us this evening. Thanks to the candidates for all agreeing to be here, and we'll get started. We're grateful as well to Dick Kuhn, who is our moderator this evening. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I also want to welcome you here tonight. It's being co-sponsored by the repository, and they have brought some questions already, and they're going to be involved in going through the panel as questions are submitted to make sure nothing's repetitive and so forth. And in all seriousness, we don't want to have somebody ask a question like, when you quit beating your wife or something like that. So we want to make sure it's appropriate. But once again, if you want to ask a particular question of a particular candidate, you're going to be addressing to that candidate, but all the candidates will have a chance to respond. Can you hear okay without the mic? You all right? Okay. And are you catching it too? Okay. All right. League of Women Voters, I get a chance to get into the soapbox a little bit. I've been involved in the organization since the mid-90s. I, for years, was a vice president. They upsets the membership when I say I'm a minority member, but the bottom line is it's open to both genders. And the real reason I got involved, I don't care much for the national level and the state level. At that level, their politics is a little different than mine. But what I really like is what's going on here tonight. And I really appreciate the candidates coming in. I mean, this is really what it's about. Where else can you see who you're voting for and ask questions directly to them? They can't really duck the questions. I guess it's my job to pin them down if they try to. But the bottom line is you don't see it anyplace else. There's no spin. You're not hearing ads or whatever. This is really what it's about, and you get direct contact with the candidates. I do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules. I know how things get come October in a campaign. You got to be like at 4 places at once, and we appreciate you coming in. Back to the League of Women Voters. There's a voter's guide in the back. I'm real excited about this year's. They've done a wonderful job. In fact, the ink may still be wet. That they just came out last week. I don't know how many thousands did we put out. 11,000. You'll find them at the libraries, different offices downtown, and I'm sure we have a pretty good handful in the back too. The League of Women Voters do not endorse candidates. They do as we do here, list the candidates submit their qualifications, and we let it go at that, getting the word out. They do come out on issues once it's been studied. The main thing, and I don't know if anybody would hear it on WHBC, but I was on there, and right before there was an ad for issue 2. And as I sit here now, I don't have a clue about issue 2. So I'm going to have to do my homework. All the pros and cons are in this document here. So you'll want to take a look and see. It's very helpful as to which way we want to go on those issues. I think that pretty much takes care of it. The ground rules are going to be by the luck of the draw. We've drawn numbers here, and we'll just go down the bench here. There'll be a 2-minute time where they can tell a little bit about themselves. You can stand up if you want. I'm not going to stand up, but help yourself. They have 2 minutes to tell a little bit about themselves, and once everybody had an opportunity to do that, we will then rotate answering the questions. And I'll get a bit confused, so I'll have to rely on you, the audience, or you folks, to tell me who goes first the next time. But we'll continue, and after the next question, well, then the next number will start to have the opportunity to answer first. And after we've gone through our time limit here, we then will allow 2 minutes for a little closing, maybe saying something that came up during our discussions here or whatever, and tell a little bit about why they should vote for you. We have the place here till 9 o'clock. I was not consulted about the time, and the tribe comes on. They're on now. But they're calling for rain, so I'm not real sure. I'm banking on the rain delaying a little bit. I don't know. We'll probably be here at 9 o'clock, but I don't know if I will be. Oh, I almost forgot too. I notified the parties. Are there any candidates here that are not on the panel here? We normally put a tablet out. I did tell both parties and mentioned it to the news media that other candidates could come in and at least shake hands. We wouldn't let them speak, but we'd at least acknowledge them. And I guess nobody showed up, so I guess that's a good sign, I guess. So that being the case, any other questions, guys? You ready to roll? They're timed, and these are the timers here, and they're the ones that are going to drag them out if they go too long. They're our muscle tonight. Yeah. You ought to see if after fleas, it doesn't get quite as pleasant after fleas, right? Unless anybody has a question or understand what's going on, I think we'll get started. And we're going to go in order as far as the 2-minute introduction, and Scott Haas will go first.
Okay. I'm going to stand because it's a little more comfortable. First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for putting on this event tonight. As well, our friends with the Canton Repository. Special thanks to Attorney Dick Kuhn for moderating this. To my fellow candidates for trustee for turning out. This is honestly the first time in a long time anything like this has happened at Plains, so this is really exciting. Special thanks, honestly, to my wife that's been dealing with me since the tail end of last year. Anybody that's a candidate, their spouses know the energy, the ups and downs, the little whims that can leave the spouse frustrated, especially when you're not home a lot of evenings. As far as my background, I've got my Master's of Business Administration degree from Walsh University. I have my undergraduate degree from the Kent State University with a concentration in finance. I'm also a 2017 graduate of the FBI Citizens Leadership Academy, the Cleveland Division, as well as recently completed a field heat course for elected officials in some of the firefighting technology as well. I've been a graduate of the Leadership Stark County Signature Program, the Government Academy. My full-time job is as Director of Operations. Essentially, I'm the head operations guy. I oversee a $7.5 million budget. I have responsibility for approximately 50 employees. We're there. I'm dealing with sales. I'm dealing with operations planning. I'm dealing with project management as well as forecasting. In the community, I serve on the North Canton YMCA Board of Directors and am also a member of Rotary and a number of other organizations. I appreciate your time here this evening, and hopefully we are able to answer all your questions.
All right, thank you. Next speaker is Anthony Ridge.
Hi, I'd just like to echo what Mr. Haas said. Special thanks to League of Women Voters and the Canton Repository for putting on this forum. I think it's important that the voters, do understand who they're voting for and what they're voting. Myself, I'm a lifetime area resident. I have the utmost, luck in the world. Married my beautiful wife Ashley, and we have. I'm a little biased here, but I think the cutest little 1.5-year-old boy. He's not in attendance tonight because you wouldn't be able to hear me over him yelling "Daddy" the whole time. That was a last-second decision. As far as why I'm up here today, I'm part of the community. I work as an assistant civil division prosecutor for Stark County. Before that, I was a criminal prosecutor for the city of Canton that covered Plain Township. So for about the past 10 years in my entire governmental career, I've worked for the citizens of Plain and for the surrounding communities, and I honestly just want to continue that. I was instilled from a young age, through my dad and my mom, the importance of giving back to the community, and this is a way that I know that I can, and I'm choosing to. And like Mr. Haas said, it's not easy on my wife, it's not easy on my son, so I do appreciate their sacrifice. And by the end of this, I just hope to have your vote come November. Thank you.
I thought you were going to say you hope you still have your marriage. I was going in a different direction, apparently.
I think it's going to take a lot more than that.
Thank you. Next up is Brooke Harless. Ms. Harless?
Yes, as they all said, I appreciate you guys taking the time out to come this evening and for the repository and League of Women Voters to have this forum for us. I was born here in Canton. I moved at 1 year old to Arizona. Unfortunately, my mother was a drug addict and I was adopted at 11. That's how I got back to Plain Township from my aunt. And then when I was 18, I left for college in Texas, and then I joined the Army. Moved back here, come back home after the Army in 2008 from my last duty station at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And I have since, because I am retired, dove right into all my community activities that I could do. I am on the board of the Red Cross. I'm on the board at the American Legion Post 44. I'm on the board of the SAM Center, Serving Area Military. I'm in a number of Plain Township clubs like the Rotary, Historical Society. I'm involved with my son. I have a 14-year-old and a 2-year-old. My son is in everything, so everybody usually sees me because he's in so many activities. I try to participate, help out with that. My passion is as a community activist, and that's one of the reasons I'm going to be talking about tonight why I'm running, because I see some things I would love to get involved in and change, and I know I can only do that as an official, so I would love to be able to make some of those changes. And I don't want to bore you with more of my things I'm involved in and my college and stuff like that. I went to University of Mary Hardin Baylor, and I went to Central Texas College. I am in the Stark County Leadership Government Program that I graduated from earlier this year. I'm currently in the Signature Program. I was selected for 20 under 40 this year for Stark County. I'm being inducted next month for the Veterans Hall of Fame in Ohio. I am also a graduate of the Grassroots Leadership Academy, level 1 and 2, and a few others of those things. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And the fourth candidate is John Sabo. John?
Good evening. I also would like to echo what the other candidates said. You know, it's pretty obvious we're all first timers at this. So, you know, we're kind of asking each other what is the process of how we go about this. So, this is all new to all of us. I am a lifetime resident of Plain Township. I was born and raised here. I had the good fortune of being able to work here my entire career. For 44 years, I was on the Plain Township Fire Department. I retired after 17 years in 2012 as fire chief. So I have a lot of experience in being able to work with people. For those 17 years, I attended every township meeting. So I understand the nuts and bolts of how the township functions. I had the opportunity to watch some good board members, and I learned a lot of stuff from them. I also had the opportunity to see things that may not be those that I want to do. I have been married to my wife, Marilyn, for 46 years. And we have a son, Brian, who's a 92 graduate of Glenoak, and daughter, Lindsay. She's a 2000 graduate of Glenoak. They are both teachers in Northwest Ohio, and we're proud of what they do. We know we have a good community, and I want to continue to be a part of that community. And I just thank everybody for the opportunity to be here to see this presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We need more questions, folks. So please, if you have anything at all, please write it down. Once again, if you want a particular candidate to address it, we'll make sure that candidate does it, but then also make sure everybody responds. As I'm looking through the document from the voter's guide, screw blank, you can see their qualifications are listed in there too. Also want to mention, and I'm sorry, it's John, is it Jurgensen? Is that, Amy was filling me in and said that he was notified, but apparently is not here, obviously, and apparently doesn't wish to participate. But he is listed in the voter's guide. He did not respond to the question, but there is a fifth candidate that apparently chose not to come in and even contact us. Okay, that being said, we'll start with the questions, and let's see. I have one picked out here. There we go. And Anthony Rich will go first here. Are there concerns that Plain Township either has or does not have adequate safety services for a township of its size? and the split between residential and business properties. And I think this may have come from the rep, I think.
Thank you.
Yep.
You know, one of the things that I've looked at very closely as I prepared, you know, before I was declared my candidacy for trustee and also during, is our fire department. I come from, my dad's a retired fire chief, both my brothers are firemen. So it's something that's very close to my heart is our safety services. And when we passed that fire levy 2 years ago, we were promised certain things. Among that was 10 to 12 additional bodies on our fire department. When that levy was passed, we had 36 paramedics and firefighters. We currently staff that level at 42. We're at half the people that we were promised. And what I believe that does is it puts our residents and our firefighter paramedics safety at risk. You know, I've looked at the budget, I've looked at what the money that the levy has brought in, and I believe that we have sufficient funds to hire those additional bodies. And we'd like to do that, and we'd like to make that change for Plain Township to make our firefighters, paramedics, and our residents safer. As far as it correlates with the residential and commercial property split, obviously, you know, with the development that's going to be happening to Plain Township in the near future, I think that it's very important that we fully staff our fire stations and that we're up for the challenge that's presented to us.
All right. Thank you, sir. Ms. Harley?
Yes, thank you. Some of the things that I noticed, I conducted a ride-along this year. I was in Citizen Academy for Stark County, and I specifically requested Plain Township a couple times just because I wanted to see a little bit more of an in-depth inside look. And when I was first in the vehicle, I didn't think our vehicle would make it at all. And I was very concerned by that. The vehicle did not have even a radar. I said, how do you conduct, you know, pulling somebody over who's speeding? And he mentioned that he does the PACER test. And I was like, we really need more in this community for our fire, or for our police to be able to drive safely, to be able to conduct what they needed to. The vehicle was, you know, had 170,000 miles. And I know that we have approved with the levy to be able to get more vehicles. Some have already started to be purchased, and I'm hoping to continue that. The other thing that I noticed is the safety of, since we are hiring new deputies, why can't we have cops in shops? Most of the districts in Stark County does have that. We do not. The one Bell Store on Easton Market, they said that a number of kids will come in after high school from Gleno. They'll go through, get a Monster, and they're rolling a blunt in the drive-thru, and then they're all driving on the streets. That's a concern. I think we need to make sure that's fixed by conducting that. They also said that they do open containers on the weekends. They'll come in, order a 12-pack, pop it open, take a drink before they pull out. And I believe that we need to have that. They used to have it, according to Terry at the Bell Store. For some reason, they don't. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is John Saber. John?
Okay. First of all, adequate manning based on fire department reverts back to an NFPA standard. That would be NFPA 1710, which is the fire department organization and deployment standard. And we are definitely operating well within that standard. So any suggestion that fire stations are unmanned is just totally erroneous. When you take a look at how our firefighters are trained, that our firefighters are trained to operate with the amount of manpower based on the resources that they have. And we are not undermanned by any means. Our fire department operates with the size of companies that almost all cities our size operate with. As far as law enforcement, we are continuing to purchase new equipment. We are continuing to purchase all the necessary items for them, and we get that information actually from the sheriff. So when the sheriff suggests that those deputies have something, they present that to us, and then we in turn allocate the money and make those purchases. So if the sheriff hasn't advised us that we need that equipment, then we don't buy it for him because they are still his employees. They are only under contract with us.
All right, thank you. And lastly, Scott Hahn.
Thank you. With respect to concerns about safety service staffing, first on the sheriff's front, absolutely no concerns because our voters had passed a levy. We just got the first draw of funds the end of February, the beginning of March. by the time we give the sheriff's office enough notice to turn around, get the bodies mobilized and in place, that includes background checks, screening, training, and rolling them out to the township, there's typically about a 90-day period. So the sheriff was very quick in getting some of our initial bodies in because we took some funds out of our general fund to help get that moving forward, knowing some of the additional levy dollars were coming in. The sheriff has provided good insight, unparalleled metrics as compared to any predecessor that's been in that office that has allowed us to ramp up accordingly with the different tools and technology. From the fire side of things, is my fellow trustee John Sabo indicated, per NFPA, the 1710 regulations, combining that along with mutual and automatic aid, under no circumstances are we running undermanned. When you take a look at our funding, we're looking at 10-year projections, so some of these purchases have to be done through capital accounts and accruals. It's not all this money comes in and boom, we can go do it. Some of it takes a couple of years, so truly understanding the finances and having that budgetary experience makes a significant difference here.
Okay, thank you, sir. This question comes from the audience, and it's addressed to Ms. Harless, but everybody will get a chance to answer, and we're doing it now because it's her turn to answer. What things would you like to change in Plain Township?
Oh, I have lots of this. A few things. My big thing is sidewalks. I would love to have those installed. A number of residents that I've spoken to over the years have voiced the same concerns, especially parents. When I go to my son's events, he has to walk sometimes from the middle school to the high school for wrestling or for symphony practice, and he's always afraid of getting hit. And then when we actually have driven, I've picked him up as many times as I can to drive him just that fourth of a mile, I will see joggers almost get hit, people trying to walk their dogs. I looked into it. There is actually a program out there called Safe Route to Schools. It will give you funding up to a $500,000 grant when you apply for it in March of every year. The sidewalk actually for Snyder Road is 1.73 miles. It will cost $600,000. That will leave $100,000 left. So you would have to do a 50-50 program, which if we can raise $50,000, you can get an additional $50,000. One of the reasons I would donate half my paycheck, I could put towards that to get that funded. That's one of the many changes I want to do. I want to do a three-way stop on Apple Grove Northeast. There were some kids that got hit and killed about 10 years ago there. They said that's an issue. Same with the sidewalks on Easton. I would also, like I said, about the cops and shops, I would love to see the deputies out more to be able to man some of the traffic. I see a lot of people complaining about speeding. And I also would like to make sure that we are more accessible if I do get to be a trustee. A lot of people complain that they don't get to see the trustees as much as they would like to.
Thank you. John Sabo?
Changes. The first thing that I would work on would be to try to create a collaborative effort of all elected officials to put pressure back onto the state for us to get part of our money in local government funds that all of the political subdivisions have lost. Everybody has a stake in this. When you look at every political entity, those local government funds were all a part of what we were supposed to get to keep local taxes down. And they have started to dry up. And I think that we might be able to put pressure on state officials if we, as local officials, collaborated to a point where we got them to move on certain things. Another change that I would like to see would be for us to look at those state laws that deal with traffic issues. As Brooke stated, there are some issues in neighborhoods, but unfortunately our hands are tied based on Ohio revised code requirements. And I think those are some things we need to look at as far as legislation to allow us to make some of these neighborhoods safer, especially in those streets that are long distance.
All right, thank you. Scott Howell?
Actually, you know, opportunities for moving forward this year, three things. First, as John indicated, really the local government funding. We've been fortunate in Plain Township that we have not had to make significant cuts to services because of the fiscal prudence that the board has operated with in delivering services through collaborative partnerships and efforts to entrusting our department heads to bring best practices to the board to consider for implementation. We're going to continue to build upon accessibility of services for our residents. This board has implemented 2 software solutions, one called iWorks within our zoning that helps with our permitting. We're going to be expanding that for road permitting and stuff within fire, to making that also an online action. So instead of you having to worry about making it to Township Hall between 8 and 4:30, if you're at home in the evening, you're able to take care of it, to our parks registration through the active network. And lastly, I want to build upon the unparalleled historical economic revitalization and development we've seen in Plain Township commercially with the venue, a $25 million project to Oakwood Square where we've got $5.5 million coming in, to the residential development that we're going to be seeing at Edgewood Golf Course, to some of the further build out within Lexington Farms, Wicker Creek, and so on.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And then last is Anthony Rich.
Thank you. One thing that I would like to see change in Plain Township is the way that Plain Township is receiving its revenue. For the past 3 years, we've passed 4 levies in Plain Township. Not a whole lot of people, when you sit down and think about it, realize that. But we've passed 2 road levies, a fire levy, and a police levy. I think as a trustee, I'm going to look for alternative resources for that revenue. And that's going to be a number of things, which it's going to be mostly increasing our property values through creating, filling these vacant, empty spaces of retails with new vibrant life. I also believe that working together with our surrounding communities and with our neighbors is very big in terms of revitalizing Plain Township and finding that alternative source of revenue. Just continuing to go to the taxpayers, not going to continue for Plain Township, because most of those tax-paying residents are older and they live on a fixed income. So I would really like to work with our surrounding communities, building up our property values, and really increasing the tax revenue that we get from those values as an alternative source to fund our departments.
Thank you, sir. This will be for John Sable to start. Can everybody hear okay? You coming through? It's actually, it's a combination. One from the audience, and then also I think it was from the repository. How can Plain Township take advantage of the Hall of Fame Village development? And then the rep said, what would you like to see come of the relationship between the township, the city of Canton, and Hall of Fame going forward?
Oh, I think there's a lot of exciting things that could take place there. I honestly and truly believe that collaborative efforts and cooperation are the key. There's going to be outgrowth there. The Hall of Fame Village footprint has already been set, but obviously the property surrounding that in any direction is in Plain Township. So we are sitting as a board, we are sitting as the very people that need to be cooperating. And both of us, as far as Kent City and Plain Township, being cooperative partners with Hall of Fame Village build out, we all want the same things. We all want to be able to have those extra dollars come in based on that economic growth. We want to be able to provide for our fire departments, for our services. We all want the same thing. So it would just make sense that we got together and we decided how we're going to do this collectively. And for me, I'm kind of one of those people who like to believe that we could become a model, because this isn't going on anywhere throughout the entire state. And I believe that if we did this right, we came together, we could be a model for the state of how this other buildup throughout the state can become a reality. And people would be looking at us as the people who kind of set the stage for this to develop.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Collins?
With respect to how can Plain Township take advantage of the Hall of Fame Village, naturally there's going to be some trickle-out effect. I mean, with this being tourism, we're going to have folks that are going to need beds. given the number of hotels we have, one of the revenue streams within Plain Township is bed tax. That's approximately, I think, about $429,000 in 2016. Year to date, it's about $242,000. It'll be on track to be about the same amount this year. So we got to be able to promote the tourism, because that's going to get folks into Plain Township. And I know some folks have used analogies in neighboring communities. If, hey, we're predominantly a bedroom community, what would somebody want to be driving through there? Reality is there's a good chunk of Plain Township that's the Belleville Village area. Again, the notable $25 million investment of the venue, Earth Fair, Home Goods, and so forth. So we can pull some of those folks up in. As well, we've got to have a willing party to engage. And within our recent situation, we worked for nine, not quite 12 months, going through conversation with a number of stakeholders to only have at the tail end, it go 180 degrees another way. Unfortunately, we cannot control that. And one of the things that was unfortunate in that circumstance was we didn't even get a counter proposal to what we had provided. So, trying to get some type of counter proposal in order to work off of that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Rich?
I believe Plain Township can take advantage of the Hall of Fame Village by working with the city of Canton. Right now, we don't have a voice at that table. As Plain Township, we represent almost 40,000 residents, and I think it's important for our leadership to have a voice at that table and to work with the city of Canton. My fellow candidates up here, they're bringing up the need to be cooperative, and I couldn't agree more. I think it's extremely important that we are not only cooperative, but we have a seat at that table. I believe that our leadership should do just that. It should lead us forward, and it should lead us into the development and into the, into the table there when we're developing these districts. Joint economic development districts are going to be huge for Plain Township, and those are happening in Ohio. And there is a model even here in Stark County. If you look at Jackson Township, with the way that they have set up their joint economic districts with the city of Canton. For being a township that doesn't border the city of Canton, they have multiple of these agreements with them, where Plain Township currently has 0. And I believe we can take advantage of the Hall of Fame Village with the hotels that are going to be going there to enter into these new agreements to provide for that alternative tax revenue.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Harley?
Well, basically, all three said what I was going to say, so I agree with all of them. I believe we do need to collaborate, definitely with the city. We also need to do it with the county commissioners. Plain Township as a whole has downsized actually 1/3 of their land because it's been annexed so much. We cannot afford to have anything else annexed, so we have got to collaborate with our cities and townships surrounding us, because we need to be able to move forward to keep property taxes lower. We're at the highest that we've been since 2000, besides the stock market crash in 2008. And if we can continue to have any part of the Hall of Fame Village, that will definitely bring us some revenue, and that will help us, especially with the JEDs, to keep us from getting any more property taxes higher for our community.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question, I think, came from the audience, and I don't have a clue what it means, so hopefully the panel here does. It says, why did Plain Township object to the TIF affecting the venue? Does everybody understand the question?
Was that did or
Why
didn't?
didn't? Why did not?
Why didn't they object to the TIF affecting the venue? And I generally know what a TIF is. I'm not sure what the venue is.
Tax increment financing.
All right. And whose turn is it? Scott goes first. Scott, huh?
Okay. With respect to why we didn't object, one, as John alluded to earlier, some of the changes that need to be made in Columbus from a legislative aspect, that process right now legally doesn't give us a recognized vote or voice in it. We have absolutely communicated, because of the relationships and the partnerships that we have at the county level with the commissioners and so forth, the importance of, hey, fixing a drainage issue, as well as how that affects that commercial area, but as well, tax increment financing essentially allows an entity to call back a portion of those property taxes that should be going to potential other causes. So, you know, what we can do is, again, we've said earlier, lobby the legislature to help get some of those language changes so we do have a voice in it, because quite frankly, the only real entities that got a voice in a vote to push back through notification is the school district. So regardless of whether it's myself or any of the current board or any future board members, until there's a change within the language, we can speak as loud as we want, as frequent as we want. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, the entities that approve that and sign off on it, they can listen to us, they don't have to listen to us, but you know, per process, we don't have it. So again, that's where the relationships I have through the legislature and being vice president of Stark County Township Association will help us in those lobbying efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Rich.
Thank you. I don't have specific knowledge on why Plain Township didn't object to the current TIF on the venue. I'm not on the board currently, but I have looked into the TIF on the venue a lot. You know, it's over $400,000 of my taxpayer monies that I've, you know, approved as a tax or as a you know, a voter, you know, to go towards fire, police, and road services. And it was concerning to me the more I did research on it that Jackson Township, you know, the county was actually planning to TIF outside of just that area. And Jackson Township, City of Canton, North Canton City Schools, they all objected to the TIF. Plain Township, from what I was told, did not. So that involved, you know, this tax incremental financing affecting the venue there, you know, for a drainage issue that ultimately is on Stark County, you know, the Stark County Commissioners to fix. And it's not a, you know, this isn't why we passed fire, police, and road levies. It wasn't to fix a drainage issue, although I do very much believe that there are drainage issues in Plain Township that need fixed and that we need to do that, but this wasn't the way. This wasn't the way to do it. Now, TIFs and tax abatements, that type of thing, you know, those can be beneficial to townships, but they just need to be worked together with other economic agreements, you know, to make them beneficial to both businesses and the townships, and that wasn't done in this case.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Harlan?
Yes, as long as I know of from what I've read and from the trustee meetings that I've attended, I don't know why we did not benefit from the venue as much as I would have liked. I know that it is costing Plain Township $480,000 over the next 10 years, and that is concerning to me, especially because from what I've read, Jackson Township is actually getting 1% back, and we, from the city, and that offsets new levies. I'm worried that we might have to have yet another new levy, and our property taxes will go up. Concerning for me is because I am on a budget. I live paycheck to paycheck, as most people, I believe, in the township do, especially we have a variety of older, you know, elderly people who live on a budget or on Social Security. We cannot, and they cannot afford for us to have any increase in property taxes. So it would be nice to know all the details of what happened with that, with the venue and the TIFs, but I don't, that's as far as I know is what I know about that.
Thank you, ma'am. John Sabo?
For us to be able to object or appeal, we first of all have to know that it's even going to happen. And the way the current law is written, the only political subdivision that has to by law be contacted is the school district. So we were not contacted to indicate that a TIF was even going to be voted on, at least from my perspective. Once we found that out, I started asking questions regarding why weren't we even officially notified? If the school district could be notified that there is a TIF going on at this level, why weren't we notified? And it was because they are not required by law to do that. So one of the things we immediately got a hold of our state reps and said, look, if for future purposes, you need to look at this law and put some language in this law that would contact all the tax collecting entities. Because not only did we get affected by that TIF, but their own tax collection levies got affected by that TIF. So they literally took money from themselves to create this TIF. So it makes, I agree, that absolutely makes no sense at all. But it didn't just affect Plain Township levies. So, you know, if I seem a little hot under the collar about that particular issue, it's because I am.
Thank you, sir. Next question, and this I think came from the rep also. What would you do to help foster economic development in the township? And it's Mr. Rich.
Thank you. I believe to help foster economic development in the township, we need to take a look at the layout of the township and identify where there are vacant areas that we can put storefronts in. One way that we can do this is with our media agreement that we currently have with the City of Canton. That media agreement is a mutual economic development agreement, and what that does is, in that agreement, first of all, it says that City of Canton will not annex Plain Township, which is phenomenal. I can't stress enough that I am totally against annexation, and I want to keep Plain Township whole. But also what it does is it allows Plain Township to use the resources that the City of Canton have in their economic development team, which consists of almost 15 people, to search out businesses and search out that type of growth that we're looking for in Plain Township and place them into the township. I believe that that's an unused resource that our board, should take advantage of, and I hope does take advantage of, whether it's myself on that board or any one of these candidates. That's going to be the number one way that we can spur on, additional economic growth within the township, and then as well as, just being good neighbors. Working with the Stark County Commissioners, working with the City of Canton, City of North Canton, on just making sure that we're made aware when there's an opportunity for business to come in, and retaining our own businesses. We've had several businesses leave just off that Fulton corridor. Now, they didn't shut down, they didn't go out of business. No, they left the township and went into a surrounding community. And that's a problem. We needed to figure out why they were going to leave, and we should have tried to stop them.
Ms. Harley?
Yes, there's actually a few different options that we can do, and I would like to see the township move forward with in the next few years. Is we have Kmart that's left. So far, from what I'm told, Menards was talking about coming in. Why has that not worked out? What can we put in there? We need to take advantage of the companies and the small businesses that we do have, and actually make them feel wanted and included. And that way, maybe word of mouth, that they will talk to fellow small businesses and say, hey, we need to come into Plain Township. They take care of our residents, they take care of our businesses, they're good with the taxes and the levies and everything of that nature. We need to actually go and seek out businesses. If we hear one that's trying to come up and looking for a spot, we need to actually go out and get them. And instead of them coming to us, maybe we need to go and hunt them down and get them actually involved and into our community, especially because right now we're at an 80-20 ratio, and if we don't get that back, ideally we need it at 70-30, and that way our property taxes don't go up.
Thank you. Mr. Sabo?
There's probably nobody sitting up here more in tune with annexation than I have. I have testified at many annexation hearings on behalf of the township's interest. And I agree, the annexation, old school annexation, is not good for the township. Unfortunately, the laws are written in everybody else's favor but townships. So the idea of that is to try to create these areas where we can cooperate. But even when that happens, there are technicalities. So if we do a type 2 annexation, for example, that is a rapid annexation, and then the tax dollars remain the same, but then there are other things that can be negotiated with that corporation to be able to work that out cooperatively. But I agree, cooperation and creating those relationships, but to sit at the table, you have to be invited to sit at the table. And unfortunately, we're struggling a little bit with being able to do that. We want to cooperate. We want to sit at that table. But it took us a long time on this particular one along Fulton. And for whatever reason, it just seemed like that was a dead issue. And we don't want it to be a dead issue.
Thank you. Mr. Haas?
With respect to economic development, I know in my opening comments I talked about unparalleled economic revitalization with the fact of what we have here in the venue to Oakwood Square. And the irony is, especially with the venue, we had some folks that previously really tried to get that pushed into an agreement with Canton that ultimately the developer didn't want any part of. And I can tell you as a board member, I reached out to that developer, went in there with our zoning director, our law director, to talk with them, to truly understand what it is they want, so it's not secondhand information. So You know, regardless of the discussion points here that may be made by some, we're at a lot of tables. Are we at all the tables that we'd like to be? Absolutely not. But this board, through the work with our zoning office, we've created the R7 PMUD, Plan Mixed Unit Development, that allows for residential and commercial. To, you know, we're leveraging the community reinvestment area, the CRA that Oakwood's being done on. They've got a 12-year, 50% tax abatement. These folks are pumping in $5.5 million into our economy, something that had been, you know, sitting vacant for 15 to 17 years. And guess what? Within the last 2 years, this board has got the ball rolling on that. We've got something done, and we're going to continue to build upon that. So yeah, there's still some infill along Fulton, though most of that's primarily residential, to up the Whipple corridor. So leveraging the Stark Development Board and some of the chamber relationships will be the key to continuing to fill that out.
Thank you, sir. I may have lost count here. I think Ms. Harless is up, I believe.
I believe you're correct.
Is that correct? And this is a combination of two questions, both from the audience, and to the extent that we haven't already covered it for each candidate. How can the township deal with cuts in state funding, and similar, how is the township dealing with the cuts in local government funds? And I swear I was listening to your answers, but if you have anything to add, please start, and that's with Ms. Harless.
Yes, actually, in regards to state funding and the cuts, the most we can do is just, instead of bringing, if we can't get more development in, we're going to have a problem with that. We need to really work with the city. We really need to do with our work with our county officials. They, you know, all the other panelists have talked about collaboration. It is a very big deal, because if we don't have collaboration with other people, we're not going to succeed or be more successful as a township. We are going to be at a stalemate, and to continue our success, we need to be able to build that relationship. And the only way to do that is to have more economic development, to be able to apply for grants, to work with the state officials and see what they can do to help even out the local government funds, so we don't have to tax our residents.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Saber?
I already alluded earlier to what I think is the starting point for state funding, and that is, you know, to create a collaborative amongst a lot of the political subdivisions that are all suffering from the same thing, that cut in local government funding. And the state taxes are basically gone. So all local governments used to rely on what they believed to be free money, because it just was one of those things you didn't have to go to the taxpayer and ask for. But when we're kicking around all this levy information, levies are complicated in terms of how they're done. And another piece of legislation that I believe needs to be done is that when a levy is passed, there needs to be an automatic mechanism that the amount of money that the levy brings in when it was initially voted on continues to grow with development and the economic development. In other words, I have 30 seconds to get this out. In other words, if a tax levy is voted on today and it's worth $10, and our economic development goes up $50 million in the next year, that levy is still only worth $10. So we need to have a mechanism that will have an automatic escalating scale that will allow that to remain stable, so that everybody is paying the same amount of money, but we have more money coming in.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Haas?
How can the township deal with cuts in local government funding? Honestly, there's not one silver bullet that fixes all this. This board, through our trusted department heads that work with us, we've implemented cost savings initiatives to leveraging different paving techniques, to different snow maintenance techniques that have controlled the amount of salt that's spread, to pre-treating that allows us to use less there. As well, there's been ways that we've been able to realize more within the bed tax and the franchise taxes that come in, that combined are about $1 million a year. You know, some of the talk here of, hey, we're at an 80-20 and we need to get back to 70-30. folks, that's gonna mean wiping out residential areas for the most part. We just don't revert back to 70-30 split. Unfortunately, due to prior boards, long before any of us, when annexations weren't contested, some of that's been lost. So when you take a look at the mix of residential to commercial and, you know, where we can further fill the gap in the local government funding cuts, outside of lobbying the legislature for funding formula changes, to being able to, you know, attract and promote more business. You know, we also need to take a look at a state auditor's performance audit that can identify potential areas for additional savings, because on a per capita basis, our service delivery cost is still one of the lowest compared to many of the neighboring communities.
You almost got cut off there.
I know. Trust me, I knew that was a long
Sorry, I
sentence.
hate
Comma,
that.
comma.
I want you to know I hate putting this one on.
Why should I?
Just so you know.
Mr. Ritt?
Thank you. When Governor Kasich took office, you know, he cut the local government fund by 47%, and that was huge. I mean, that took a lot of local economies and a lot of local governments. It hit them hard, and Plain Township wasn't exempt from that, which is, I believe, a number of reasons that we passed all of these recent levies. But I would agree with, you know, Mr. Sabo that, you know, it does. We need to, as local political subdivisions, collaborate together and push back on our state governors, you know, and on our state legislatures. We need to tell them that, you know, it wasn't okay when they did that, and we need to start making changes at a state level with that. But I also believe that it is possible to fill that gap with our current, the way that our township's currently set up. I don't know about everyone out there, but when I go around the township, I see plenty of vacant businesses. I see plenty of vacant lots, and I see plenty of opportunity for growth. You know what, I hate seeing that Pizza Hut torn down. I hate seeing that McDonald's leaving. You know, that's stuff where we could have benefited from it, but we're not. And that's why I'm up here, and that's why, you know, I believe that to benefit us with that local government fund being cut, you know, that's an area that we can get to that 70-30 is by taking advantage of those empty spots already in the township.
Thank you, sir. Now this question, I think it starts with Mr. Sabo. It's actually addressed to him and Mr. Haas, and there may be more to this question that I don't know about. What we do to protect individuals when it comes to storm sewer issues, and there's reference to a new dump station?
Stop station.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
Read the first part,
Well,
of
I
the
kind of, I left some parts out simply because I didn't know whose toes I was stepping on. I said, what will you do to protect individuals rather than builders when it comes to storm sewer issues? And then there's slash the new dump station.
I think it's a lift station.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
That's probably something the county has going on. With all of the stormwater runoff is not only regulated by us based on EPA regulations, it's also done by the county. And it's an issue everywhere. And you hear in a lot of cases that the county even has difficulty being able to deal with off-road ditching and all those types of things that cause this flooding situations to be able to get downstream faster. But we're going to continue, as we always have, to monitor what's going on. Any developments that are going in have to meet regional planning restrictions. They have to meet the county restrictions. They have to meet EPA restrictions. Those are all things that are out of our control. We don't regulate that. They're out of our control, so they're all done by a higher entity in terms of what regulations they have to follow.
Okay, Mr. Haas?
Okay, with respect to protecting individuals rather than builders, there's always got to be a balance. That's just the stark reality of it. This board of trustees has collaboratively worked on drainage issues with the county engineer and the commissioners. A couple of examples happen to be the Zimmer ditch monitoring system. That was actually one of the good things that come out of the TIF, even though it got, you know, John and our board collectively fired up, because when you take a look up in that area, there were a number of homes that were right on the Plain Township, North Canton border, homes that were constantly being flooded. We as well had a Plain Township business, it was Pathway Caring for Kids. Anytime there was a hard rain, that place was flooded out. Through state and federal dollars that were able to be secured, they've leveled it, returned it to green space, so we don't have to worry about damage happening to individuals. The folks that had the homes within North Canton were given funds to help relocate elsewhere. We've secured $200,000 in community development block grant money to help provide fixing issues with drainage, culverts, piping, storm sewers. One of the ones I dealt with recently was a collaboration between Nimishillen Township, the county engineer, county commissioner of Plain Township, where we had Bentler Road being undercut because of a county ditch. And in unparalleled fashion, we got this done within a matter of a couple months, where typically it could be years.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Rich?
Thank you. As far as what we do to protect individuals rather than builders with storm sewers, I would agree with Mr. Haas. That's something you have to balance very, very tightly there. But I think as a trustee, the important thing is that you're there for the residents. If a resident has an issue or has a concern, that you're there to talk to them, and that it's not just passing the buck. I definitely agree with Mr. Sable, what he was saying, that this is regional planning, this is Stark County engineer, does a lot of this, and they're in charge of a lot of the planning of it, a lot of the approving of it. But I don't believe that means that our board of trustees just needs to be taken out of the equation. I believe as a trustee, we're given the unique opportunity to represent a township that is small enough that we can be there for them when we're called, and we can address their concern. And I got to tell you, if I'm elected, you probably aren't going to like everything I always say, but I'm always going to tell you the truth. I'm always going to be there to talk to you. And I think that's the important thing, even if it isn't the township's responsibility, but we're there to protect, and we're there to hear the individual, and hear their concerns and explain why, if we're going against what their concerns are, why we're doing it.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Harley?
Yes, in regards to the question, how can we protect individuals? Well, there's a number of things we can try to do. We can try to build retention basins. We can try to build a riparian corridor. We can also work with, in regards to the lift stations, one was recently fixed after the life of the actual lift station has been given up. That was on lift station 25, and that's with the Stark County Commissioners. So we would work with the Stark County Commissioners to see if we could collaborate with them so we can get the funding or the necessary tools to go ahead and make sure all the lift stations in Plain Township have been serviced or up to par and will not cause damage to our individuals and our residents, and on top of that, our businesses, so we don't have more loss in economic development.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question, and I think it goes to Mr. Haas. And we touched on this already a little bit. Do you think it would be a good idea for Plain Township to enter into a JED with the city of Canton? Or maybe any JED with anybody?
I guess that's a very vague and very broad question. Ultimately, it comes down to what are the agreeable terms and conditions that will mutually benefit all parties involved. It can't be a win-lose. It's got to be, a win-win-win. And when I say win-win-win, I'm not just talking about whether it's Plain Township and the city of Canton, the city of North Canton, or any other neighboring community. All the other stakeholders that are involved in this, from businesses to residents. In some instances, there have been prior talks of trying to get an entertainment district up where the venue's located at. And there was a push, we've got to get a CETA or a JED in place here. The developer really wants it. When I got to the table with our zoning director and our law director, they didn't want it. They didn't need it. What they were looking for from the township was help with the traffic signal portion of things. So it all really comes down to what's the opportunity, who's going to be providing what services, and what's being received in return. So I'm a firm believer if we can create win-wins that are beneficial to everybody, all stakeholders, not just the government entities, then absolutely we do. We can't afford to wall ourselves off, but we also have to stand up for ourselves and push back if something's not gonna work for us.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rich?
Thank you. In order for Plain Township to enter into a JED with the city of Canton, it has to be right. You know, I'll use the term, you know, a win-win-win. I definitely agree with that. You know, Mr. Haas brought up the venue, and that's a perfect example of where a JED would have worked and where it made sense for the businesses, it made sense for the residents, it made sense for Plain Township, and it made sense for the city of Canton. I obviously wasn't in the room with the developer, but when I look at it and when I view the JED that was created, just not signed, and it states in there, you know, that the money that's going to happen, that the income tax will be split between Plain Township and the city of Canton, that those businesses, those 6 hotels on the mountain there are going to get city of Canton water rates, which is 80% lower than the township water rates. You know, that's stuff that makes sense. You know, and the developer would have gotten that traffic light, which he did get, but he got it out of the county TIF. The county TIF, you know, took 75% of that development, of that new development, and those tax monies, and diverted it to the Zimber ditch and to that traffic control device. You know, and that's something that could have been worked out and worked through the JED. You know, and that's where TIFs and tax payments make sense, is when they're paired with the JED, so that it is a win-win-win. That the business gets this, incentive to redevelop and revitalize the area around its business development, but also the township's made whole through the income tax and through the development that's going on, and the businesses get certain discounts, you know, with their water rates and with things of that nature.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Harley?
Actually, I agree with both of them. The JED, if we can't afford to have another situation with what happened with the Hall of Fame happen again. So we need to work and get a JED, because that also brings money into the township that would offset any kind of increase in levies or property taxes for us. If you drive down 62, if you go through all the, you know, Oakwood Plaza and everything like that, there's a lot of empty buildings. There's even, you know, the Your Pizza Shop and that. If we could, even though that's more in the township, but we're going towards some of the city of Canton and the empty buildings that way. If we can just collaborate and work with them well enough and open those doors again that have been shut recently, we might be able to move forward to actually get some more JEDs into the township.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Sabo?
For you to be able to develop a JED, the situation has to be perfect. And 2 minutes is not enough time to talk about the complications of JEDs. If you have any kind of area at all that's already been established, and there are individual store owners represented, they have a say in that JED. So it's not as if you are only dealing with a single property owner. So it tends to become very complicated. So what makes this seem like it's a very simple thing that you just come together and you make it happen does not happen in a vacuum. So the ideal places to do JEDs are to do one owner property where the development starts, and you tell that developer or talk that developer into the leases that he writes, that he speaks for the owners of those leases. That way, when that happens, you are only dealing with a small group of people that can pull off how that JED is going to be formed. So having places that have already been developed are not the ideal places to do JEDs. Furthermore, it's like a marriage. If you have to have somebody that agrees to enter into the marriage before the marriage is going to occur. So for us, we try to work with individuals to talk them into whatever we can do to make that happen. But everybody has to agree to make it happen.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think we're up to Mr. Rich, and here this came from the repository. Do you think the township needs more services for the youth and senior citizens who live here? And if so, what do you have in mind?
That's something that I'd like to focus on the youth part of that. That's something that I've been looking into recently on how to, through my collaboration with Y Stark and the Young Professionals Group, how to maintain our youth population and how to get, my generation, the millennials, back to the table and back to Stark County. And I think that all starts at the high school level. I think, I think what would be great is for, us to go into the high schools and show the high schools what kind of opportunities there are in local government work. Whether it be the fire department, whether it be, our local sheriff's department or the road department, or, if we showcase some of our area colleges, Walsh University, Malone University, or Kent State. I believe that that's a way to get in and to provide these programs to our youth and to get them engaged in the community, and that's going to keep those youth and those individuals to stick around in the community when you engage them at that young age at the high school level.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Harlan?
Actually, there's a few services I've thought of that I think we need for the youth and for senior citizens in Plain Township. I would have loved, before I knew that Drug Mart was coming into Oakwood Plaza, I would have loved to have seen that building turn into either a bowling alley or to like a rock climbing laser, take kind of entertainment area, even, pinball machines or anything of that nature, because we don't have anywhere close by the high school in that area for our kids in the winter. Everybody, the bowling alley over there on Fulton closed down. Everybody is out there at Belden Village, nowhere close by for us. I would have loved to see a senior center in one of the buildings, one of the low unoccupied buildings inside Oakwood Plaza as well, to give our senior citizens somewhere to go. They can do choir performances, they can have their lunches and have people serve them from the youth, and that would give them some community service that they would like to volunteer for and bring about.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Sable?
Couldn't agree anymore. Anthony selected the young group. I'll select the old group. If I was his age, I'd have selected the young group. But in case you haven't noticed, I'm the senior up here. So certainly from the younger activities and that type of thing, like I said earlier, I have a son that's in that generation. I have a daughter that's in that generation. And they're near and dear to my heart, and how they are involved in the community. I couldn't agree anymore. But from a senior citizen standpoint, I don't think we have enough of those things from a senior citizen standpoint, including housing. So when you start to look at where the baby boomers are going to go in terms of housing and in terms of what activities are going to be available, I think we do need to pursue those things, whether it's through our park system, whether we create a committee within a committee in the township and we can do that with the youth as well, that we could create committees and they can meet on a regular basis and bring ideas to the board and work as a ad hoc committee, I guess, if you will. I think those are great ideas.
Mr. Haas?
With respect to township service needs, because I'm on the outside of the whole Y-Star group, because at 40 you age out. I actually was involved with that group for quite a bit, where I spearheaded the professional development, and there was a governmental affairs outreach. And again, similar to the reasons that Mr. Richard referenced, we are an older population dynamic in Plain Township, and ultimately we have to be able to churn some of that and get the younger families involved. I know through our parks programming, our parks director's done a phenomenal job actually honing in some of our programming, where we've been able to secure large regional tournaments that have helped lead to reinvestment back within our facilities, whether it's new turf at Diamond to allow for a walking club for seniors in the morning, too. We've just made recent investments in netting that will allow for folks to go in and practice their golf swing through the winter months. I've worked with collaboratively with the schools through the High School STEM Academy to actually help develop what's now known as Veterans Park. And it's not always necessarily about the active sports, some of it's passive. And those kids have all become stakeholders in seeing that hillside develop and evolve. But mentoring through junior achievement and what I do over at the Walsh DeVille School of Business with mentoring, to our collaboration with Stark Parks and the trail expansion throughout, I think those are all things that are adding ultimately to the enhancement for our youth and seniors.
Okay, I think that's everybody for that question. The next one comes up, it's Ms. Harless, I believe, and I'm sort of mixing some of them together here. How many of you have experience in the public safety sector? And please explain. But I think I'd also add to that public and or private safety sector, if there is such a thing, or what you're doing now, what do you bring to the table for your position of trustee? How's that for a question, Ms. Harlan? Well, actually, let's put three questions together because the game's going on.
I'm
So.
like, I'll hurry, don't worry. My husband didn't even come here because he wanted to go to the watching it. The experience with public safety, I'm not gonna lie, I don't have that experience. I mean, unless you count the military, that's a different aspect of safety for, our troops and everything like that for our country. Even for the private sector, I do focus on just community activism. So any kind of public safety, all I have is the experience of the Stark County Citizen Police Academy and what I've learned about the different programs and the different departments that they have. If there is a concern about our public safety or the private safety sectors, I would collaborate with the leaders of those departments and work with them about what would need to be handled depending on what the situation is.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Sabo?
As I stated in the introduction, I have 44 years in the fire service in Plain Township, but it actually extended well beyond that. I had a very specific role in the state of Ohio's emergency response plan. I was Region 5 coordinator for the 13 county NECO region in Ohio. And I was deployed with Ohio's Incident Management Assist Team to St. Bernard Parish, Louisiana, in the aftermath of Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. And it was a life-changing experience for me because it was just unbelievable in terms of not only what we did, but the actual human interaction. Sure, we went there to do some very specific operational things, but the lessons that I learned there were actually more human, interpersonal than they were operational. So I've had a lot of experience in the interaction also with our local LEPC, that's a local emergency planning committee, and they do SARA Title III, Right to Know. I've also been a part-time employee for the Stark County Emergency Management Agency, and I've taught in the Fire Science Academy at Stark State College for the past 37 years.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hahn?
Ultimately, there are a number of things I believe I'm able to draw upon from my experience in the public sector as township trustee, to that my role as a director of operations in the private sector. As township trustee, because of our relationship through the sheriff's office, we've actually been able to create a partnership that allows us to house the Northeast Ohio Violent Fugitive Task Force. That's something that doesn't just benefit Plain Township. It benefits greater Stark County. It helps tackle some of the opioid epidemic to some of the worst criminals that are out there. As well, I sit on the Stark Council of Governments as an executive committee member, where they're tasked with, helping push forward the whole centralized dispatch, to which Plain Township, quite frankly, outside of Jackson having their own dispatch, Plain Township is the first community to fully centralize all of their dispatch with fire and police out there. So that's going to help enhance safety and well-being. Two, in furthering my own knowledge and experience, having been a 2017 graduate of the FBI Citizens Academy, learning more about international domestic counterterrorism, white-collar crime, political corruption, crimes against children, two focuses on the opioid epidemic. There's some things there to doing regular ride-alongs with our staff to better understand what it is, when they need, when they make those requests.
Thank you, sir. I think we went through everybody, right? Okay, so next up,
I'd like
you
to
speak?
answer.
By all means, okay, sorry. I told you it was gonna happen, right?
Yeah, no problem.
He heard the scores tied up. Hold on.
Actually, I do have a score, and I'm not gonna tell anybody about it.
Is that the thing that was handed to you right there? Nice. I guess my experience in the safety sector, Well, first of all, I mean, the house I was raised in, one of my favorite childhood smells was smoke. My dad coming home from a hard day's work, as John's kids probably are the same way in Maryland, you grow up with that and you associate that with, the person that you love and respect. And that's kind of, what drove me to be, where I am today, as a prosecutor. From a very young age, I was instilled with the need to give back. Both of my brothers followed my dad's steps in becoming firemen. I'm, I guess, not that crazy, John, to run into the building when it's on fire. So, I chose to do this route. And even though I went to Cleveland to get my law degree, I worked for the City of Canton Law Department all throughout that. And I've worked, for the residents of Plain and for, their surrounding communities and for Stark County as a whole, my entire career. And it's not as long as John's, but I got to tell you, I look forward to giving back, and as a part, when I was a criminal prosecutor, I really got to learn the residents and learn what their needs were and their concerns. And I worked with our deputies and our officers on a daily basis. And I feel like that brings a great amount of experience into the safety sector. Even though I'm not the one out there doing the work, I definitely have their backs and learn from the experiences that they have as well.
All right, thank you, sir. This is the last question, unless we get some more from the audience, which would be great. And I believe it first goes to Mr. Sabo. This came from the audience. When did you first get involved with politics? When did you get the political bug, or whatever you want to call it?
Probably the year I became fire chief. I learned early on that if you are going to be the leader of an organization and you're going to be the face of that organization or that agency, you have to be the go-between, that if you have goals and visions that you want to make happen, you have to work with the people that are above you. And in my particular case, it was 3 board members, 3 very distinctively different personalities. And you can say whatever you want, but you have to learn to work within those personalities. So if I could not work with those personalities, and I go to that board and I am seeking to make a purchase of a particular piece of equipment, I have to convince them for me to be able to get that piece of equipment, which is going to not only make it more efficient and safer for the people that I am leading, but in addition to that, motivate them based on what it is that they're getting. So it's politics, you learn to do it. So I've just been introduced to a wider range of that in the last 2 years that I've been here. But I think that anybody that's a department head or the head of an agency has to understand politics if they're going to be the leader of their agency or organization.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hawes?
I would say it was probably about when I was 30, because up until that point, I thought it was craziness, anybody wanting to deal with this stuff. But after having went through leadership Stark County, a friend of mine who successfully run for state house rep on 2 terms, after getting him successfully elected, and really not having any political party, involvement, it was group of 4 to 6 of us that sat down, read some books, developed a plan, executed. I got to thinking, you know what, if I'm not going to leave Stark County because of it, whether it's career opportunity, it's family, whatever it is, education, as active as I was in a number of other groups and still am, my wife will tell you, I want to be in the driver's seat. Yeah, that requires responsibility. It requires accountability. But guess what? When you're accessible and you're doing what's right for the people, given circumstances at any point in time, that motivates me and inspires me. And I can tell you, quite frankly, there's not a single resident that would ever be able to tell you I've never communicated with them, because I've always prided myself on speed of response, even if it's going to take me 24 to 48 hours to get back with you. I had an issue today with the Stark Parks Trail where there wasn't bowlers. We had vehicles going off the road onto the trail. That creates a hazard. Within 20 minutes, I had a response. I had the director of Stark Parks involved. We're working on solutions. So it's those type of things that.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Mr. Rich?
I guess I first got involved in politics when Judge Frashoni hired me in the Canton Law Department. He politely asked that I walk in a few parades with him, and that was, I guess, my introduction. Mr. Sabo, this is my first go-around and actually put my name out there and trying to get something done myself. Now, I completely understand that in Plain Township, there's a board of 3 trustees, and that politics are going to play a big role in me being one voice of those 3 and getting along with the other 2 trustees, whoever they may be. But I believe that politics shouldn't, especially on a local level, shouldn't be about party or anything like that. It should be about the person. It should really be about what that person can bring to the table and how that person can benefit the township as a whole. And I very much, at least recently learned that politics can be hard and exhausting, but I'm still here asking for your vote, so I guess I haven't gotten enough of it.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Harlan?
I would say the first time was in 1992. I was selected as a Canton Explorer at the repository. It was a writing group that you could become a part of, and I became like an associate news correspondent at the Democrat convention, and I met John Glenn, and I remember meeting Hillary Clinton, and I remember meeting and interviewing everybody, and I remember meeting the delegates and interviewing them, and it was just fascinating to me, the changes they can make, and they were standing right in front of me. After that, I ended up working on a campaign for the Stark County Commissioner at the time in 1984. And then I left for college, and I became an officer of my class, and I became an officer of my sorority and stuff like that. Unfortunately, the military took me away, so I was not into anything political until I moved back here. I ended up on a number of boards. I saw a few things that I wanted to change, and I knew that to get those changes done in Plain Township, I needed to become an official, and I was hoping that I could bring a new voice to Plain Township from the community aspect, and from a parent aspect, and from a veteran aspect, and just a different kind of aspect, just to make the board a little bit more well-rounded, and to see what I can do, because I love to make changes, and I love to be able to help other people, and that's really important to me.
Okay, thank you. We ran out of questions. The one question that the 2-minute closing argument, or whatever you want to call it, if that meets everybody's approval. And I've got it starting with Mr. Haas.
Well, one, I appreciate all of you taking time out of your evening. I'm sure there's more fun things that can be done right now, like an Indians game or spending time with family. But I've truly been humbled and honored to have served this community since January of 2010, where I think we've made significant, measurable improvements. Sometimes less is more. We hit on a number of areas tonight, from economic development, and hating to see Pizza Hut leveled, but honestly, that's part of the bigger $5.5 million investment. When I'm taking a look at the Route 62 corridor, and I've got business owners and I've got residents that could potentially just be wiped out because the state comes to us with 8 plans. None of them are good. It's putting that homework and those hours in with my fellow board members and teammates to represent Plain Township, to where we create win-win situations where the state goes, you know what, all those plans were bad. We've come up with an alternative that preserves essentially all of the business corridor through there, with the exception of one location, which is looking to consolidate. It restricts the access points that ODOT's looking to. We create a win-win-win. It's those situations that I pride myself on. Bringing, my private sector experience, where right now, I've got 3 companies that essentially I've got responsibility for, $7.5 million P&L responsibility, management of 50 employees. You want to talk about managing relationships, expectations, and dynamics? I think I've proven it there, as well as with what some of the initiatives are we've done here within the township. So I humbly and graciously ask for your vote Tuesday, November 7th, or if you vote absentee and vote earlier, well then, at that point. So thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Ridge?
Thank you. Once again, I would just like to thank everyone for their attendance tonight, and the League of Women Voters for putting on a very professional and cordial question forum. I think that a lot of the issues got flushed out tonight, and this is something that I'm very passionate about. I've lived in this community all my life, and I've worked in this community, all my life. I still work in this community on a daily basis. As a Stark County prosecutor, I have a unique, line of sight to Plain Township and its surrounding communities. I have been able to cultivate relationships and respect through the past 10 years of working, with the mayor of Canton, with our Stark County commissioners, with other county entities. I believe that the ability to bring that respect to the board and those relationships to the board is something that we're lacking and something that I can do for the township. I decided to run for trustee when I determined that I felt I could do a better job and that change needed to happen. And that's why I'm up here, and that's why I'm asking for your vote. To bring that respect and bring those relationships to the table, I think is something that Plain Township, honestly, with the economic development, with everything that's potential the next 2 to 4 years, is something that we need for the future.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Harless?
I'm a fighter. I've been a fighter all my life, from everywhere, everything from being homeless to being attacked, to being in the military, to being a woman, to being just in life in general. And I will bring that same fight for the community, for our residents. There's so many things that I would love to be able to do, and I know that I won't be able to do them unless I get your vote to be lucky enough to be your trustee. Since I am retired, I do have the time to be able to devote to the community. I will be able to be more accessible. I talk to residents every single day. I have for years, because I'm out in the community every single day, via if it's my child going to a school event or if I'm going and visiting the small businesses. I want to make small businesses feel more welcomed here. I want to feel that the residents have a voice and that they're being heard and not neglected. I would love to be able to show that it's community first, that my background as a community activist, that will show that my leadership skills and how I work well with others from all my time in the military, from all the boards I sit on, shows that I can make those changes. And I would really, really would just love the chance to be able to bring that to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Sabo?
On January 1st, 2018, I still want to be a Plain Township trustee. I want to thank all those people that have helped me with this process. I believe I have both the hard and the soft skills necessary to do this job. I want you to just listen to a couple of these and just appreciate the fact where I'm going to go with these. Those soft skills include trust, honesty, communications, teamwork, patience, flexibility, sacrificing, able to take criticism and learn from it. I told you all earlier that my wife and I have been married for 46 years, and I honestly believe those soft skills have allowed us to have that successful marriage. And I'm going to step off of the campaign trail right now, because if I don't say this, I may never get another opportunity to say this. But my wife has been, during this process, as Anthony alluded to, she's been my harshest critic and by far my fiercest supporter. And she's walked neighborhoods, she's been at football games, she's helped put up signs. And I just want to say in front of everybody, win or lose, come November the 7th, that November the 8th, I'm still the biggest winner in this forum.
That does it. You won't get me to comment on that last. Folks, we do appreciate particularly the candidates coming tonight. It's kind of a gruesome, scary proposition to come forward like this, but as I mentioned before, nobody else, this is the only place you can see the folks here and hear what they have to say and compare the candidates. And I do appreciate, we all appreciate you coming in. Please, a round of applause. A news flash that came in just before I got here is apparently we're trying to do something in Louisville. And I guess we've got a date, I think the 18th, but don't take it for sure, but I think it's 18th at the Elks out there. And we'll try to get the word out to the different entities that tell you exactly when and where and so forth. It's the Board of Election out there, and I'm told that there's some hot topics in the school board out in Louisville, so I look forward to that. Let me remind you that while it's too late, today was the last day for registering, but starting tomorrow, early voting starts, and then of course the election is November 7th. So please remember to vote. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Have a good night. I didn't know about the cooking.
How are you?
How you doing?
Good. I can tell.